Here are the most dangerous cults that ever existed. Let's look at them.
Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate sounds like the name of a fancy hotel, but in the 1990s, it became one of the strangest and saddest cult stories ever. It was led by Marshall Applewhite, who told people that Earth was basically a dead end, and that the real goal was to leave their human bodies behind and go to a better place in space. Yes, space. Not a joke, not a movie pitch, but the actual plan. The group mixed sci-fi ideas, religion, and a lot of fear. And that combo can be super dangerous because once people stop trusting their own eyes, they start trusting the leader way too much. What made it work was not magic. It was pressure, control, and a promise that sounded bigger than real life. People were told they had to give up normal things, normal relationships, and normal thinking. That is how cults often get people. They do not always start with something scary. Sometimes they start with a warm smile and a big promise, then slowly turn the volume up on control until people do not know how to leave. The wild part is how otherworldly ideas can sound smart when someone says them with confidence. That is the trap. A person can hear a crazy idea and still think, maybe this guy has a point. That is how the brain gets played like a free trial that forgot to cancel.
Jonestown. If cult history had a giant red warning sign, Jonestown would be flashing like a broken airport sign in a storm. It was led by Jim Jones, who built huge trust with his followers by acting like he cared about justice, community, and equality. At first, that sounded like a movement, but behind the curtain, it became a prison with speeches. Jones used fear, loyalty, and total control to keep people trapped. He separated families, punished doubt, and made people believe the outside world was the enemy. That is one of the oldest tricks in the book. If a leader can make the world seem scary enough, then the group starts looking like the only safe place left. And that is the scary part. People do not always join cults because they are weak or foolish. A lot of them join because they want help, meaning, or community. Then the group slowly turns into a machine that eats trust. By the time people notice the smoke, the room is already full of it. Jonestown became a name the world still remembers because it showed just how far manipulation can go when one person has too much power and nobody is allowed to question them. It is the kind of story that makes you say, yeah, maybe never hand your whole mind to a stranger with a microphone.
Shinrikyo.
Shinrikyo is one of the most chilling examples of how a cult can grow from weird beliefs into real-world danger. It began as a spiritual movement in Japan, and then turned into something far darker under its leader, Shoko Asahara. He mixed religion, fear, and apocalyptic talk, and he built a group that believed the world was heading toward destruction. That kind of message can hook people because it makes them feel special, like they are the chosen ones who can see the truth while everyone else is asleep. But once that idea takes over, it can become a giant ego trap. The group starts believing it must act for the greater good, and that is when things get very dangerous very fast. Shinrikyo is remembered for a major attack in Tokyo that shocked the world. The lesson here is simple, even if the story is not. When a leader says their group is the only source of truth and everyone else is blind, that is not wisdom. That is a giant, blinking alarm. A healthy group can handle questions. A dangerous cult gets mad when you ask them one.
The Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians are often remembered through the Waco siege, but the story behind them starts with a religious offshoot that became deeply centered on one leader, David Koresh. Like many cult stories, it did not begin with people thinking, great, let's join something scary. It started with a search for truth, answers, and belonging. Koresh built a system where his followers gave him more and more control. And once that happens, the group can stop being a community and start being a closed box. Inside that box, the leader's word matters more than family, more than facts, and sometimes even more than safety. That is why cults are so hard to understand from the outside. People ask, why didn't they just leave? But that question misses how control works. If someone has been trained to fear the outside world, doubt their own thoughts, and trust the leader above everything, leaving can feel impossible. It is not a simple switch. It is more like trying to walk out of a maze while someone keeps moving the walls. Order of the Solar Temple. Order of the Solar Temple. The Order of the Solar Temple looked, from the outside, like a secret mystical group with fancy ideas and hidden meaning. But underneath that shiny mystery was a dangerous mix of belief, fear, and control. It pulled in people who wanted spiritual truth and gave them a story that sounded deep, dramatic, and important. That is a common cult move. They wrap themselves in mystery so people think this must be advanced knowledge. But secret does not mean smart. Sometimes secret just means hard to question. And when a group makes itself feel special by staying hidden, it can create a fake world where the leader always wins and doubt is treated like betrayal. The Order of the Solar Temple became notorious because of deadly incidents tied to its beliefs. That is the part people remember. But the bigger lesson is the pattern. A group can start by saying it has hidden wisdom, then slowly turn into a place where people stop thinking for themselves. And once that happens, the whole thing can go from interesting to absolutely not in a heartbeat. NXIVM. NXIVM is one of the newer names people bring up when they talk about cult-like control. Because it did not look like a classic cult at first. It looked like self-help, business coaching, and personal growth. That is what made it so sneaky. It wore a suit, smiled for the camera, and talked like it was here to improve your life. The problem was that behind all the polished talk, the group was accused of deep manipulation and abuse. People were drawn in through promises of confidence, success, and becoming your best self, which sounds harmless until it turns into blind loyalty and control. That is the slickest trick in the whole game. When a group tells you it can fix your life, it also gets the power to quietly break it apart. NXIVM matters because it shows cults do not always look like robes and chanting. Sometimes they look like a seminar, a workshop, or a network of ambitious people who think they are joining the next big thing. That is why people need to keep their brains online. Not every expensive promise is a scam, but when a group wants your money, your time, your secrets, and your obedience, that is not personal growth. That is a huge nope. Scientology. Scientology is one of the most famous and controversial modern organizations people talk about when the word cult comes up. It has public faces, famous supporters, and a lot of criticism around how it handles members and critics. That makes it a complicated case. But the reason it gets pulled into these conversations is that people often say it uses pressure, control, and secrecy in ways that can feel cult-like. A lot of groups become powerful by keeping outsiders confused. They use special language, hidden rules, and strict loyalty tests. That creates a world where only insiders are in on it, which sounds cool for about 5 minutes, and then starts feeling like a trap. If you need a secret map just to understand the rules, that is already a warning sign. The bigger point is not to treat every unusual belief like a cult. People can believe strange things and still be harmless. The real problem starts when a group demands total loyalty, shuts down questions, and tries to control how members live, think, or leave. That is when the line gets crossed from odd to danger. The Illuminati. Now let's talk about the Illuminati, the group that somehow became the ultimate internet villain. In real history, the Bavarian Illuminati was a short-lived secret society from the 1700s, not some all-powerful shadow boss controlling the planet with a giant remote. But the idea took off because humans love a good hidden mastermind story. The modern Illuminati story is a lot like a giant game of telephone. A real group existed, then rumors grew, then conspiracy theories piled on, and now people blame the Illuminati for everything from music videos to world events. That is the funny part and the annoying part. It is easy to turn a secret society into a monster when nobody can prove what is real and what is just internet seasoning. The reason it stays popular is simple. It gives people a neat answer for messy problems. Instead of saying, "The world is complicated," it says, "A hidden group planned it all." That idea feels satisfying, like solving a puzzle. But life is usually not that clean. Sometimes chaos is just chaos, and sometimes people are just very good at making up stories. Freemasons. Freemasons are one of the most famous secretive groups in the world, and they have been the target of wild rumors for a long time. Some people think they are running everything behind the scenes, while others see them as a social and charitable organization with traditions and rituals. The truth is usually a lot less movie-like than the rumors. What makes groups like this interesting is not that they are secretly evil. It is that mystery makes people curious,
and curiosity can turn into suspicion fast. If a group has symbols, passwords, and private meetings, people start filling in the blanks with their imagination. And the human brain loves filling blanks, even when it has no business doing that. Freemasons are a good example of how secret society does not always mean dangerous cult. The label gets thrown around too easily. Some groups are private, some are odd, some are misunderstood. But once a group starts using secrecy to demand loyalty, silence criticism, or create a special class of chosen people, that is when the alarm bells should start screaming.
Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is another famous secret society that people love to talk about because it feels like a real-life mystery novel. It is associated with Yale and has long been wrapped in secrecy, rituals, and a lot of public curiosity. That alone is enough to make people suspicious, because humans hear "secret club" and instantly start side-eyeing the moon. A lot of the fear around groups like this comes from how power works. When a group has wealthy, connected, or influential members, people naturally wonder what is going on behind the curtain. That question is fair, but it is also important to separate mystery from proof. A group being secretive does not automatically mean it is controlling the world. Sometimes it just means it likes being private, which is still a bit weird, but not the same thing. The reason Skull and Bones keeps showing up in these conversations is because it represents the bigger fear behind secret societies. People worry that the real decisions are not made in public. Whether that fear is justified or not depends on the evidence, not just the spooky vibe. Still, let's be honest, a club with a skull on it is never going to look normal in daylight.
Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is one of those places that sounds fake until you learn it is real. It is a private gathering spot where powerful men have met for years, and it became famous because of the secrecy around it. That secrecy is exactly why people get suspicious. When important people meet in hidden places, the internet does what the internet does best and starts cooking up theories. Now, the important thing here is not to pretend every private gathering is evil, but secrecy always makes people ask questions, especially when the people involved have real influence. If something affects public life, people want to know who is there, what is said, and why it is hidden. That is a normal reaction, not a conspiracy addiction. Bohemian Grove is a great example of how private clubs can feel bigger and scarier than they may actually be, because secrecy turns a regular event into a legend. And once a legend starts, it is hard to pull it back. Suddenly everyone is imagining robes, rituals, and secret deals, when the truth might be much less dramatic or still odd in a different way. THULE Society. The THULE Society is one of the darkest names on this list because it is tied to early Nazi-era ideas and extremist beliefs. This is not the kind of group people joke about because its influence was connected to real hate and real harm. It shows how secret societies are not just about mystery. Sometimes they can help dangerous ideas spread when they stay hidden and build an echo chamber around themselves. That is the real danger. When a group is secret, extreme, and obsessed with purity or hidden truth, it can become a breeding ground for violent ideas. People inside start feeding each other the same thoughts until those thoughts feel normal. Then the group begins to believe it is chosen, superior, or awake, while everyone else is supposedly weak or corrupt. That kind of thinking has caused damage again and again in history. So when people talk about secret societies, this is the part they should not forget. The scary part is not always the masks or symbols. It is the way secrecy can protect bad ideas from being challenged.
If you liked the video, can you subscribe, please?